I was kicked out of my house on Christmas Eve by my own mother. It was snowing. I remember that detail clearly because the flakes landed on the garbage bag she told me to fill with my belongings. She stood at the door, one hand on her hip, the other pointing to the driveway like she was directing traffic. "You're 34, she said. "It's time you learn to take care of yourself." As if I hadn't been doing that since I was 10. My brother, Evan, was inside on the couch, sipping hot cocoa and laughing at some rerun. He didn't even look up when I dragged my suitcase across the wooden floor. I didn't expect him to. Evan was the golden child. He always had been. When we were kids, I would wake up at 5 a.m. to get myself ready for school while Evan got a ride, lunch money, and a kiss on the forehead. He once failed algebra twice and still got a car for his 18th birthday. I got told to take the bus to community college. Every time I did something right, I got silence. Every time Evan did something mediocre, it was a parade. "If only you were a little more like your brother," Mom used to say. I heard it so often I used to repeat it in my sleep. But still, I stayed. I helped. I handled things. When Dad died, it was me who drove to the morgue. I was the one who found his old passwords to handle the estate. When Mom got sick, it was me who took unpaid leave from work to sleep on the hospital floor. Evan? He came once. Stayed 15 minutes, told the nurse he had allergies because hospitals give him hives. I paid bills when Mom couldn't, grocery shopped, cleaned, managed her meds, all while working 2 jobs and trying to finish a degree she said was a waste of time. Then came the betrayal. It started small. A missed thank you here, a snide comment there. Then Evan moved back in after losing his job, which somehow meant I had to sleep on the pull-out couch. When Mom started talking about updating the will, I naively thought I'd at least be acknowledged. Instead, I found the documents on the printer. Her estate, the house, savings, everything was going to Evan. "He needs it more," she told me when I asked. "Besides, you're so independent. You'll be fine." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just nodded and said, "Okay." That Christmas Eve, she tossed me out like expired leftovers. No warm goodbye, no hug. Just a slammed door and a gust of wind that nearly knocked me over as I stood on the porch. I sat in my car for almost an hour, hands frozen, eyes dry. Not from lack of tears, just from having none left to give. That was my rock bottom, and it was also the last time they got to write my story for me. After that night, I didn't call, didn't text. I moved into a friend's spare bedroom and got a job doing data entry just to cover my bills. It wasn't glamorous, but for the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. There was no one to criticize my cooking, no one to tell me I was being dramatic for wanting boundaries. Just me and the silence, which, for a while, was louder than anything I'd ever known. And they noticed. The first message came from my mom. 2 weeks after Christmas, a photo of Evan holding a birthday cake. "We missed you today. Hope you're doing okay." No apology. No acknowledgement of what she did. Just a fake olive branch dipped in guilt. Then came the rumors. Apparently, I'd stormed out over nothing. I was ungrateful, selfish, jealous of Evan. I found out through an aunt who still liked me enough to call and say, "I don't know what's going on, but your mom's been saying some pretty nasty things." I laughed. Of course she was. She needed a narrative that made her the victim. So I stopped answering calls, blocked her number, removed Evan from every social app. I wanted distance, not drama. That's when they got desperate. First, it was the surprise visits. She showed up at my office one day, sobbing in the lobby, said she just wanted to talk. My boss gave me that look, the one that says, "Handle your family, please." So I walked outside and said, flatly, "I'm working. You can leave now." Next came the care packages. Boxes filled with my childhood trinkets, broken jewelry, a baby blanket, an old yearbook, sent to my friend's apartment. Like memories could fix what she broke. Like nostalgia could pay rent. Evan messaged me out of the blue one night. "Mom's not doing well. She misses you. She doesn't mean what she says." I didn't reply. Because I remembered what he said to me the day I left. "She just doesn't know how to handle your kind of energy. My kind of energy." Apparently, independence, boundaries, and not being a doormat were now considered a personality disorder. Then, things escalated. I got a notice from the bank. Mom had tried to access an old joint account we used when she was sick, the one I never closed because I forgot it existed. She tried to withdraw the remaining balance, a few $1,000s I'd left in there for emergencies. When I called the bank, they said she claimed to be me, used my full name, my birthday. The only reason they didn't let her drain it was because the signature didn't match. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just guilt tripping anymore. This was theft, identity theft. I changed all my passwords, closed that account, started locking my mail. I felt like I was in a bad Lifetime movie, except this wasn't a jealous ex or a deranged stranger. It was my mother. But what really broke me wasn't the money. It was the voicemail she left the day after. You've changed. You used to care. You used to be good. Good, as in obedient, quiet, useful. I realized then that I had never been loved, only leveraged. I had been the emotional mule, the unpaid therapist, the one who held everything together while being told I was the problem. And now that I wasn't available to exploit, I was suddenly cold, heartless, difficult. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was done. And that's when I started digging, quietly, carefully. Because if they wanted to play dirty, I could play smarter. And smarter would hurt a hell of a lot more. The first clue was the insurance paperwork. I was helping a friend with a claim and remembered how I used to handle Mom's paperwork when she was recovering from her surgery. Out of curiosity, maybe even habit, I checked the online portal for her policy. I wasn't expecting anything major, just leftover mail I hadn't rerouted yet. What I found was a name I didn't recognize listed as her secondary beneficiary. And it wasn't Evan. It was a man named Douglas Hart. I thought it was a clerical error. But the last name triggered something. I started flipping through old photo albums I'd taken from the house years ago, back when I still thought family memories meant something. In a plastic-sleeved page was a man with a beard, standing next to my mom at a barbecue I barely remembered. The photo was labeled, Doug, old family friend, except I never met him. Evan never talked about him. And I certainly didn't know he had been named in place of me on a 6-figure policy. Something wasn't adding up. I started pulling strings. Quietly. I requested her will from the lawyer she used. Surprisingly, it wasn't hard. She'd used my old firm, back when I worked there briefly before finishing school. I still had a few connections, and one of them, my old mentor, Nancy, didn't ask questions when I said, I think I'm being cut out of something important. When Nancy called me back, her voice was low and careful. There's more than one document, she said. Your mother updated her will twice. Once last year, and again 4 months ago. The final version? Evan gets everything. And she filed something else. A revocation of kinship acknowledgement. I blinked. What does that mean? She sighed. Legally, she declared you as not her biological child. I went cold. She said what? She filed it as a sworn affidavit. Claimed you were adopted informally by her late husband and herself. It's sealed, but I saw it before the privacy flag kicked in. She's saying you're not her daughter. I felt like the floor had been pulled from under me. It explained everything. The resentment, the favoritism, the erasure. It wasn't just emotional cruelty. She had rewritten my entire existence out of spite. But the thing is, if she wanted to make it about blood, then I was happy to make it about truth. Because I was her biological daughter. And I could prove it. I drove straight to the drugstore and bought 2 DNA kits. Mailed one to Evan, one for myself. Said it was a genealogy curiosity. He always loved pretending he was Scottish royalty or descended from someone important. I made it casual. Played the game. While I waited, I talked to Nancy again. She recommended a lawyer, one with sharp teeth and a heart for justice. His name was Jules, and he didn't flinch when I showed him the affidavit. She tried to disinherit you and disown you. Interesting, we can work with this. Jules started digging, financial records, property transfers, power of attorney. The more we found, the more it reeked. Turns out, Evan wasn't just the golden child. He was the financially dependent one. He had been draining small sums from Mom's account monthly under the guise of maintenance costs. Thousands over the years, all while I was paying bills and cleaning up after their mess. Then the DNA results came in. Evan and I, not full siblings, not even half. No shared DNA, which meant either I wasn't Mom's daughter or Evan wasn't hers. I stared at the screen for a long time. I had imagined pain, drama, maybe even regret. but what I felt was ice. I brought the results to Jules. He raised an eyebrow. We can subpoena hospital records, birth certificates. This could open up a case, not just of fraud, but of criminal impersonation, if she misused your information on legal documents. I nodded. I don't want a war. He smiled. Then let's win one without lifting a sword. He drafted a cease and desist to Evan regarding the joint account fraud, sent a request to void the will due to misrepresentation. He filed a motion to demand proof of maternity, citing the false affidavit. But the real grenade? The letter I wrote myself, sent to my mother, no return address, no emotion, just the DNA results, and a copy of the fraud report. I didn't include a threat. I didn't need to. The truth was the threat. 3 days later, I got a text from Evan. What the hell is this? Mom's losing her mind. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, they were the ones unraveling, not me. It started with a knock. Not at my door, at theirs. Jules filed the motion just before noon on a Wednesday. By Friday, my mother was served with a legal demand to produce birth documentation, medical records, and financial statements. Evan, too. I heard later that he threw the envelope across the room, called Jules a parasite in a cheap suit, which was funny considering Jules wore Armani. The lawyer's letter was clinical, precise and lethal. It laid out the accusations, defamation, inheritance fraud, misuse of personal identity, misappropriation of joint financial accounts. My mother's lie about my birth wasn't just cruel, it was illegal, especially since she'd tried to use it as leverage to disinherit me and claim benefits under false pretenses. She cracked within days. My phone rang, again and again. First it was Evan, angry, panicked, then silence. Then my mother, dozens of calls. I never picked up. She left voicemails that started firm, "You've gone too far this time," and ended unrecognizable, slurred crying, muttering about family, betrayal, and how she never meant for it to go this far. But I did. I meant every word of the affidavit we submitted. Every screenshot of her bank transfers to Evan labeled roof repair and medical loan, even though no roof was touched and no hospital bill existed. Every photo of her smiling next to me at every milestone she now claimed wasn't real. Jules advised we take it slow. Let her drown in her own timeline, he said. She built this. We're just pulling the curtains back. Then came the news I didn't expect. The house. The one she claimed was being left to Evan? She had refinanced it twice. Once, 6 years ago. And again the year she kicked me out. Both times to bail Evan out of credit card debt and a failed business he kept quiet from everyone. The house was leveraged to the hilt. Technically, she didn't even own it anymore. When the court started probing for asset declarations, the panic went nuclear. She tried to rewrite the will again, declared she was of unsound mind when she signed the last version, claimed she was pressured, that Evan had handled the paperwork. Funny how quickly the loyalty turned to backstabbing. And Evan? The golden child? He cracked harder than she did. He sent me a message, long, manic, riddled with typos. Claimed he never asked for any of it. Said he was just trying to help Mom. Asked if we could settle this privately. I responded with 2 words, contact Jules. Then blocked his number. Next came the public unraveling. A cousin reached out, one who had always kept quiet. Sent me screenshots of the family group chat. My mother had spun a tale of betrayal, that I was greedy, that I'd stolen from her, that I was mentally unstable and had abandoned the family in her time of need. But when the truth leaked out, and it always does, things shifted fast. People started asking questions. The screenshots, the bank records, the DNA results. And then I made the final move. I posted the truth, not in a rant, not in a smear, just the facts. On Facebook, where every relative, old friend, and Bridge Club member could see. It was a quiet post. Since I've been painted as a villain, here are the facts. I took care of my mother through 3 surgeries. I paid her bills for 4 years. She filed a legal document stating I wasn't her child. DNA testing shows Evan and I share no biological relation. Legal action is ongoing regarding inheritance fraud and financial abuse. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for truth. No hashtags, No theatrics, just truth, finally unfiltered. The fallout was glorious. My aunt, the only one who'd ever believed me, called crying. Said she always knew something wasn't right. That she remembered my mom disappearing for months before I was born, and how Evan had been brought home from the hospital with no explanation of who the father was. More family reached out. Quiet apologies. Some loud defenses, but fewer than I expected. And as for my mother, the courts froze the estate for review. Her bank accounts flagged for financial misrepresentation. Jules filed for an emergency injunction against any asset sales. Her world, the one built on secrets, control, and guilt, crumbled. And I sat in my new apartment, cup of tea in hand, lights dimmed, watching the storm she created finally fall back on her. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile, I just breathed. For the first time in years, I could finally exhale. 3 months passed. The house was listed under foreclosure. Evan had disappeared off social media. No more flexing his business ventures or humble bragging about how hard it is being the reliable one. Turns out when the credit card stopped working and the free rides ran out, he wasn't so loud anymore. Mom tried one last time, sent a handwritten letter, no return address. Just a thick envelope with trembling script on the front. Please read. Inside there were no apologies, just explanations, excuses. Stories about how hard it had been being a single mom, how Evan needed more support, how I never made things easy, how she was scared when she found out I was pregnant. I stared at that last line, because that was the other thing I hadn't told you yet. I was expecting, 8 weeks along when the DNA results arrived. 11 when the court confirmed she had no legal right to exclude me from an estate she tried to fraudulently manipulate. 13 when I held that letter in my hand, her final Hail Mary. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I had already chosen something bigger, peace. I moved to a new town, found a little cottage on the edge of a lake, tucked between pine trees and quiet roads. The kind of place you don't stumble into, you seek it when you're ready, when you've earned rest. I work remote now, still in tech, but on my own terms. No late-night caregiving. No begging for space that was never given. No more tiptoeing through guilt masquerading as love. Some days I walk barefoot in the grass and think about all the energy I spent trying to be enough. Enough daughter, enough sister, enough backbone for a family that was never built to carry me back. Now I carry myself. I found a therapist who doesn't tell me to make peace with the past, but who asks, gently, what does it feel like to finally put the past down? And you know what? It feels like oxygen. My baby's coming in spring. I've already decided what I won't pass down. Silence. Shame. Generational debt paid in apologies. We'll build something new, something honest. A few months ago, Evan sent one final message from a new number. I heard about the baby. You know Mom wants to meet them. I didn't respond. Because there are doors you don't just close, you seal shut. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't fire or fury. It's absence. It's joy they don't get to witness. It's living a life they swore you couldn't survive without them. They said I wasn't really family, so I gave them proof and walked away. Story 2, I'm 32 years old, and my name is Skylar. It's hard for me to realize how fast things can change outside my window as I sit here in my dark bedroom. The world is silent. The shower curtains let in a gentle stream of sunlight. Dust drifting like fantasies long since gone. However, a maelstrom of betrayal, sorrow, and love is brewing inside of me. Firmly encircles each recollection of the life I once believed to be mine. With its plush carpeted floors and cream-colored walls, this property is more than simply a dwelling. It is the $750,000 part of who I am. After 3 years of scrounging every last cent from our arduous workdays and late-night sacrifices, Calvin and I finally purchased it. Together, we constructed it, painting every nook and cranny and securing each shelf with optimism. It seems like applying pressure to a bruise that hasn't healed, even though Calvin sang his name. The most inconspicuous way for us to meet, standing in queue at a little bistro off Main Street for coffee. Paper was leaking out of my overcrowded bag after a client meeting, and he stood behind me, his eyes soft and his grin worn. The identical drink was ordered by each of us. He joked about destiny. I chuckled. It didn't matter. Then it became everything. What came next were intimate meals, candid strolls in the park, secrets spoken at 2 in the morning, and a type of love that seemed like the world was finally turning around. Calvin always checked, defied, ate, and kissed my forehead as if it were holy ground. He was the type of man who never raised his voice. My parents, however, never thought so of him. My mom claimed he wasn't polished enough, Janet. Martin, my father, felt that a lady like me was too easy for him. They made every effort to stop me when I informed them I wanted to wed Calvin. Silence, guilt, and emotional threats. Love, however, doesn't wait for approval. A tiny cake and a few close friends attended our little wedding. Calvin's hand shuddered when he put the ring on my finger, and I was wearing a delicate blue dress. I've never had a happier day in my life. I discovered that I was pregnant a year later. In the kitchen, Calvin picked me up off the floor and spun me around while laughing through tears until I was laughing too hard to breathe. We spent the entire night brainstorming names, creating nursery color schemes, and speculating about the characteristics of our unborn child. We decided to call him Jack if it was a male. However, fate had its own terrible timing, as it usually does. Calvin went out to get groceries just 4 days after we first noticed Jack's heartbeat fluttering on the ultrasound screen. I recall urging him not to forget the vanilla ice cream I was wanting while grinning and waving from the doorway, barefoot. He blew me a kiss and winked. I didn't see him alive after that. Half an hour later, the phone rang. His name was spoken in a soothing voice for such news. Like a nightmare, the phrases accident, instant, and I'm so sorry blended together. As if to shield Jack from the heartache my body was unable to handle, I collapsed to the ground, gripping my stomach. The funeral came and went. I don't recall the casket sinking into the earth, the faces, or the prayers. All I can recall is that my parents did not volunteer. Not once. Not a hand on my shoulder. No big embrace. There was not even a ride home. However, the very following day, something terrible started to blossom. They began to invade my house. Janet entered as if she had always been here. Martin trailed behind, muttering that my brother Brandon would soon require space for his college plans and that the house was too large for one lady. I was unable to comprehend it, but it was the first caution back then. The wall's initial shadow. Calvin, they came not to mourn. They came to take what was mine and what was left of him. I sat in the nursery as a result. Once, with the hope still alive within me, Calvin and I painted under the moonlight, whispering to the ever-increasing strength of life. I will defend you, Jack, even if it means defending you from members of my own family. My world was still moving as if it were underwater a month after Calvin's burial. The sadness had persisted. Simply put, it had gotten quieter, lurking in the nooks and crannies of every quiet space. But one thing had sustained me throughout it all: the little kicks in my stomach. Jack, my son. My justification for breathing. I wanted to feel happy again for the first time in weeks during my 8th month of pregnancy. So I made a little plan. Just some close friends during a baby shower. Something personal, tender, and mine. On that Saturday morning, I got up early. The scent of vanilla frosting and fresh flowers filled the house. The cake, which was white with swirls of pink and gold and soft edible pearls along the bottom, was something I made myself. Every single paper flower I had pinned to the wall didn't bother me, even though my back hurt. Each serviette was folded by hand. Each glittering place card, all of it was for me and Jack. I wanted to be celebrated for once, by 2:15 p.m. The doorbell rang as I was fixing the final piece of the linen table runner. My pregnant yoga classmate Emily was there on the porch with a present wrapped in blush pink paper. My first actual visitor, I muttered to myself, feeling a little uneasy. "You look fantastic." She gave me a soft embrace around my bump while grinning. "The home is stunning. Did you do all of this on your own?" Warmth sprang to my cheeks as I nodded. Yes. Although it took several weeks, it kept my mind occupied. More friends soon followed. My partner in company, Zoe, brought cupcakes. The neighborhood Sarah had balloons. The room was filled with laughter. I felt whole for the first time in months. I wasn't the lady barely surviving or the distraught widow. To be a host, I was a mother, a lady who was still important. The front door banged open as we were ready to cut the cake. I went cold, dressed as though they were going to a business brunch, Janet and Martin walked in 45 minutes late. Janet's attitude was harsher than required, and she was wearing her typical phony grin as Martin brought a strange package. She said, "Sorry, honey, we're late," in a tone that implied I was to blame. Despite the awful traffic, we have some really exciting news. I felt my gut tighten. That tone seemed familiar to me. I pointed to the cake. We were close to doing so. A special announcement. Martin gave a loud roar. The commotion ceased. My pals looked at each other. I steadied myself by holding on to the back of a chair. After that, he entered. My younger brother Brandon is holding up a letter as if it were an Olympic flame. I entered. He raised the letter in the air and shouted, "Baby Princeton!" Janet started crying. She was crying over a letter of acceptance to college, the same mother who had not cried during her son-in-law's burial. She sobbed and gave Brandon a hard embrace, saying, "My brilliant boy." He succeeded. Princeton is his destination. His loud orange and black-clad companions waved up behind him, carrying phones and Princeton flags, and they were already taking photographs in front of my decorations. They knocked down the gift table without even seeing it. Nobody took attention. The handcrafted banner-eyed welcoming sign for baby Jack was torn down and replaced with a handmade paper sign. Between 00750 17 and 008 12, the celebration that was meant to be about my kid, Calvin's legacy, and me turned into a college party for my brother. Don't worry, Princeton bound. Slowly, with sickness swelling in my throat, I retreated. I fled into the kitchen and took a deep breath. The only thing that grounded me was the clinking of crockery. Someone lightly stroked my shoulder. "Are you all right?" Before I could respond, Brandon's voice erupted from the living room and began to tell the tale of his application. How he knew he was Ivy League material even though he nearly didn't get in. He did, of course. Someone bumped into my dessert table back in the living room. Hours ago, I piped the icing with such care, and now it's spilt over the floor. "Don't stress over it," Janet casually called from the couch. "Simply stuff. Simply stuff." I got down on my knees. I began using paper towels to dab the filth despite the pain in my spine. Nobody offered assistance. Nobody took attention. I was wiping icing off the floor when 8 months pregnant. "We were always certain that Brandon would succeed," Martin's proud voice roared. The pain in my heart was more intense than the one in my back as I stood slowly, one hand against the wall. My celebration had been stolen by them. Within 1 hour, they had transformed my baby shower into Brandon's triumphal procession. Silently, I entered the nursery. The one area they hadn't yet broken into. The rocker was where I sat. Calvin had constructed it himself. I made contact with the cot. The walls remained a gentle shade of blue. Here, the remembrance of him persisted. "They don't see you, but I do," I told the kid inside of me as I closed my eyes. "I'll also make sure they can't get to the most important things." Never again. The house fell silent once more. There was no longer any laughter. The icing on the flooring was dried, and the banners fell apart. I couldn't sleep, though. My body hurt after everyone had departed, even Brandon and his cheer squad. But my heart, something worse than despair, was pulsing through my heart. It was the sensation that occurs when something breaks and no one else hears. Staring at the mess they had left behind, I sat at my desk. On the counter, adhered to a patch of pink frosting, was a Princeton brochure. Outside, my mom's TV banner was saturated in Pepsi and lying in a garbage bag. The big, cream-colored envelope was hidden behind a stack of mail as I grabbed for a glass of water. I hadn't noticed it before. I opened it out of curiosity. There was a brochure from a prep agency in Princeton and several printed receipts. I went cold. The invoices included $4,200 for college application assistance and $2,800 for a private SAT tutor, $1,750 for essay editing, along with my business account number at the bottom of each one. I opened the desk drawer containing my files with shaking hands. There were bank statements inside. Since Calvin's burial, I hadn't done any reviewing. I laid them out on the desk, one hand holding a highlighter. My chest hurts. There were red flags everywhere, withdrawals. Purchases were not authorized by me. At designer boutiques where I had never set foot, I never charged. Janet's signature. A sizable $3,000 payment for college-age solutions was even noted in the statement from the month Calvin passed away. I felt sick to my stomach. I wasn't simply being disregarded. They were using me. I rummaged in the drawer till I came across a chilly object. Tucked down under old tax paperwork is a mason jar. There was a 6-year-old yellowed receipt inside. When I was living in a small apartment and sleeping on a futon, I received my first rent check. Additionally, I could settle the credit card debt that my parents said they inadvertently registered in my name. It wasn't a coincidence. It had never been any of it. Printed invoices from the previous year, including application fees, editing services, and tutoring for Brandon, were hidden under the jar. They had drained my company, which they had named Q Crafts, to finance their own brand of success. It buzzed on my phone. After yesterday, how are you feeling, Emily? I received another notification before I could respond. Kim, doctor. Issues with blood pressure from the previous visit. Are you able to visit this week? A third email ping follows. Victoria's family lawyer. If you require legal advice regarding your circumstances, please let me know. This is not new to me. You're not by yourself. Those final 3 words held my attention. You're not by yourself. However, I didn't feel that way. Not here at home. In this family? No. The floor creaked at that moment. I turned, my love. Janet entered the room, her voice brimming with manufactured sweetness. Arms crossed as though a judge had already rendered a decision. This summer, Brandon's friends will require lodging. Martin leaned against the wall of the hallway behind her. Additionally, the nursery will be needed for storage. Just Brandon stuff. Their voices reverberated throughout the house as if they were part of it. However, this was not their home. I lived here. Calvin's and my were built on sacrifice. Dreams hold it together. They were attempting to absorb everything gradually. My house, my company, my joy, my motherhood. The baby kicked hard. As if he felt my rising fury, I sat down at the desk and opened my laptop. Slowly, methodically, I started looking up eviction notice templates. Not for tenants, for invaders. The printer hummed to life as it spit out 3 crisp pages. Each one was weighed down with 34 years of manipulation and betrayal. This isn't just about me anymore, I whispered, hand resting protectively on my belly. This is about Jack, and he's going to have a mother who fights tomorrow. I would serve them tonight, I would prepare. The morning after, I printed the eviction notices. I woke up early. The house was unnaturally quiet. Too quiet like the calm before a tornado. I tucked the documents into my purse and padded barefoot into the kitchen, still in my robe, the baby shifting heavily inside me with each step. By the sink sat a half-empty mug of coffee Martin's. A Princeton hoodie was thrown over the back of my dining chair. Brandon's and 3 pairs of muddy sneakers lined the hallway by the stairs. Not mine. I took a deep breath and followed the noise. Brandon and 2 of his friends were in the living room, sprawled on the couch as I bought eating cereal from my wedding china and laughing at a video on someone's phone. They didn't even glance up when I entered. Morning, I whispered gently, my hand reflexively resting on my back to lessen the pain. 8 months of pregnancy was like walking with a rock in your spine. Brandon offered a lackadaisical nod. We're thinking of putting up the Xbox in the nursery. Better sound there. I blinked. The nursery? He shrugged. Yes, Dad said we could use it for the summer. Just till I go for school. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. That was the room Calvin and I had painted together. The crib. The small blue bookcase was put together. He held the cell phone in his palm. We had that room. Brandon, I said. You can't, Skylar. Janet strode in after me, her words piercing the air like a dagger. She was holding a pair of keys in one hand and a clipboard in the other. With Brandon getting ready for Princeton, we've made some changes to the household schedule, she added hastily. We require organization. Lately, you've been emotional, unpredictable. You should give the lads some room. Martin pretended to be impartial as he followed hands in his pockets. All we care about is what's best for everybody. I started to object, but Janet interrupted me. Until the baby is born, you are welcome to remain at Emily's. You're under too much stress in this house. My hands were shaking. I live here. Janet let out a loud sigh. Calvin lived there. With the down payment, we assisted you. Remember that you didn't. Calvin and I paid every dollar ourselves when I lost my temper. You didn't care at all. Janet lost her grin. Skylar, don't be so loud. Your thinking isn't clear. I'm expecting a child. My voice trembled as I spoke. Not a fool. Behind her, Martin's voice raised. That's sufficient. You have been challenging for months. You're not working as hard. You anticipate pity. You're turning into a liability. Then he came forward and took hold of my arm. Although it was not a firm grasp, it was sufficient. Just enough to make me gasp. Enough to silence Brandon and his companions. Sufficient to bring me nearer the brink. I was standing on without realizing it. Give me up. With my voice now, I said, steal. However, he didn't. Janet, on the other hand, came forward and took my handbag from the kitchen counter. What is this? With sweetness, she inquired, taking out the notices of eviction. She studied the strong letters and read one, her lips curling. Residency termination. Skylar, really? She ripped it in two and tossed the fragments on the ground. Then, without any prior notice, Martin violently pushed me in the direction of the front entrance. I attempted to steady myself on the wall as I staggered backward, the baby moving terribly. He responded sternly, You're making this ugly. We provided you every opportunity to join our family. However, you are free to go if you do not support Brandon's future. He pulled open the main door. 8 months pregnant, I stood still. Hands shaking, heart pounding. Do you want me to leave? Now, I muttered. Janet folded her arms. You've been requesting it, and that's it. I'm evicted from my own house. No coat, no shoes. Just the keys, myself, and my kid inside of me. I continued to hold on as if they were a weapon. I took my time going down the front stairs. My eyes are hurting from tears. Out of anger, not weakness. Jack moved inside of me as if he realized everything had changed, and I sat in my car with one hand on the steering wheel and one on my stomach. They pushed us away. They don't know what's going to happen next, I murmured to him, because I wouldn't be the pregnant lady they threw away tomorrow. I would be the one who finally said enough, the plaintiff and the warrior. Not even the sun had risen. However, I was already clothed and seated in the family lawyer Victoria Bennett's little office. Emily had put me in touch with her company, which focused on family fraud, property disputes, and what she called paper cut wounds that bleed people dry. She calmly and sharply gazed at me while pushing her spectacles up her nose. You mentioned that you and your late husband bought the house and have lived there ever since. I gave a nod. 3 years. Each and every mortgage payment that Calvin or I make. Co-signers, no. We live there. My home. Victoria opened a folder that was encased in leather. Do you possess the deed? I reached inside my handbag and took it out. Before Martin pushed me out the door, it was one of the few items I was able to grasp. This very moment. We both have names. Nobody else's. She gave a little smile. It's a solid beginning. I told her everything for the following hour. How Calvin was never welcomed by my parents, how they hardly showed up for the burial, how they began to show up without invitation, how they gradually settled in, and how they eventually ejected me. Victoria didn't say anything at all. She simply and effectively took notes. Do you have any record of financial misuse? She questioned once I was done. I took out the other envelope. Credit card records, bank statements, and photocopied receipts for Brandon's preparatory classes. Signatures of authorization that were obviously not mine. She raised her eyebrows a little. Skylar, this is more than abuse. This includes unlawful eviction, identity theft, and financial exploitation. Everything was recorded. I took a deep breath. I want to be free of them, lawfully. Indefinitely. She promised to give it to you. We are requesting complete ownership and property protection. Legal lawsuits seeking monetary damages and court orders for unauthorized entrance. She spoke steadily yet calmly. She went on, like steel under velvet. You must return to the residence with me or the cops present. Secure your accounts, change your company passwords, and instruct your physician to start recording symptoms of stress. I gave a nod. He had already begun. For weeks, blood pressure has been high. Excellent. Tapping her pen, she said, Broken bones are not the only things the court handles. They react to paper traces. You have a forest too, Skylar. I returned to Emily's guest room that evening and turned on my laptop. I backed up all company files to an encrypted device, updated all of the passwords, and it enabled two-factor authentication. After that, I made a folder called Legal Case: Janet, Brandon, and Martin. I put voicemails, screenshots of their illegal logins, transcripts of Brandon's insults, pictures of the nursery taken before and after the party, Zoe's email records demonstrating abrupt changes to our client database, my OB/GYN notes about high blood pressure and pregnancy stress, and a special picture of Calvin and me smiling in front of a nursery with paint on our cheeks inside. "It's for us." "To the screen," I muttered. "For Jack and for you." Victoria filed our complaint at the county courtroom 2 days later. Make one false eviction claim. Make a second claim. Unapproved use of company cash. Allege 3 instances of financial identity theft. Make a claim for pregnancy-related mental suffering. Enter the property without permission and claim 5. Every assertion is supported by pages of documentation. We ask to have all legal authority over the house. Reimbursement for all monetary losses. A court-enforced eviction order from my home and permanent restraining orders against all 3. I had a buzzing phone that night. "Zoe, using your previous company login, they attempted to send emails once again. I turned it off. Do you want me to provide a statement? There's more to your narrative, Emily. You have only just begun. You may get all the notes and health reports you want from Dr. Kim." I let out a slow breath, my chest heaving with terror. Just enough to allow for the entry of anything else. Decide. They believed that I would be broken if I were thrown out. They were unaware that they were reviving a side of me that I had suppressed for many years. The side that no longer feared me and realized my value. "My baby shower was stolen by you," I muttered out loud. "My peace and my business. I'm taking everything back now, though, lawfully, indefinitely." There was stillness and the scent of wood polish in the courthouse. I wore a blue pregnant dress as I entered through the large glass doors. My swelling feet are relieved of pressure by the gentle salt in my shoes. However, my jaw is solid and my posture is straight. Drama wasn't why I came here. Justice was the reason I was here. My expectations were not met by the courtroom. It was more tense than any room I had ever been in, with fewer people and smaller benches. Victoria and I were seated at the plaintiff's table, composed and well-organized. My parents, Janet and Martin, were seated opposite us, with Brandon at their sides. With their pastel-colored outfits, the 3 appeared to be attending a religious service. Fake worry fills the faces. Judge Harris walked in front of a stern, middle-aged woman who had no patience for showmanship. Victoria carefully opened. After presenting my company account records, screenshots showing unauthorized access, and the surveillance video I had collected from my home office, she lay out the house deed with Calvin's and my names on it. As soon as the video started playing, Janet and Martin's expressions transformed. They were apprehended around 2:47 a.m. on a covert camera. "My file cabinet is being searched by Janet," Martin murmuring. "Keep an eye out for anything that has account numbers." From the hallway, Brandon was giggling. The judge didn't flinch, and she won't even notice. For the following piece of evidence, she merely nodded. Zoe's email statement describing the fraudulent communications she delivered to clients was in a folder that Victoria turned over. A notarized copy of my OB/GYN report was pushed out of me, according to Emily's witness note. Because of ongoing family-related harassment during the last trimester, the patient's blood pressure was raised. Brandon moved around in his seat. Martin didn't look at him. Janet gripped a tissue as if it were her only source of support. The show started when it was their turn to talk. Janet dabbed at her tears and remarked, "My daughter has always been emotional. All we wanted to do was assist her in raising the child. Everything has been misunderstood. Martin said that Skylar was unstable. She shoved us away. We were forced to intervene." Judge Harris's eyebrows went up. "You signed your daughter's name on financial documents and pushed her out of her house while she was 8 months pregnant. It doesn't sound helpful. It sounds like fraud." Janet stopped crying. Martin flushed. Then Brandon committed the deadly error. He said, "I had no idea it was her count. Dad assured me that was all right." There was silence in the courtroom. Judge Harris gave him a stern look. "Are you acknowledging that the account was not yours and that you intentionally profited from its use?" He parted his lips, then shut them again. Victoria looked across at the judge. Your Honor, my client wants to permanently remove these people from her financial life and physical domicile, in addition to obtaining complete protection for her company and property. A pause occurred. Then the decision was made. Skylar Evans is granted complete and exclusive ownership of the land by the court. Both Janet and Martin Evans, together with Brandon Evans, are subject to a no-contact and no-access order. Skylar will get $42,500 in reparation for using her company cash without authorization. The court has required that all 3 defendants undertake financial counseling. If these terms are broken, criminal charges will follow. I let out a breath of release rather than relief. In one breath, the strain that had been inside me for 12 weeks was gone. Janet let out a gasp. Martin stood like if he had been struck. I didn't glance at them, but Brandon slammed his folder shut. I turned to face the judge. I turned to face Victoria. That night, I looked to the future. At Emily's place again. I put my hands lightly on my stomach while I stood in front of the mirror. "Jack," I muttered. "We succeeded. Mommy fulfilled her pledge." I pushed the front door open and it creaked. The keys shook a little in my grasp. It was something else. Not terror. It was something I hadn't experienced in months. Calm. Slowly, my eyes adjusted to the gentle light streaming in from the kitchen window as I entered. A subtle scent of lavender, the type Calvin used to add to our washing, permeated the air. The quiet had lost its hollowness. It felt liberating. Once more, the home was mine. Formally. Emotionally and legally. The Princeton posters and mud-stained sneakers had vanished. The debates, the manipulation, the lost books. I just let myself be there, standing in the center of the living room. I just took a deep breath. The day prior, Zoe had previously scheduled a cleaning service to come through. Victoria had emailed the final certified copy of the judgment, and Emily had given over some new food. I've returned here because of every bit of evidence and every statement I made in that courtroom. But it was Jack who pushed me onwards. I experienced a sudden change, a tightness, and then a warm soreness in the middle of my back the very following morning. The time had come. Emily held my hand as I murmured through the agony as I breathed through the contractions, and she drove me to the hospital. "He's prepared." "You've got this," the nurses said, surrounded by calm hands and gentle lighting a few hours later. The one sound that really mattered reached my ears. Jack's initial sob. He was placed on my chest. His cries were demanding and angry, and he was little and red-faced. I wiped one shaking finger over his cheek as I chuckled through tears. I said, "We're home, baby boy. You succeeded. We succeeded." A few days later, I returned home and sat in the nursery, the room Calvin and I had painted together so many years earlier. It now had the scent of new dreams and baby lotion. With his small fingers wrapped around the edge of a blue blanket embroidered with his name, Jack slept soundly on the cot. Above his crib, I had put a framed picture of Calvin with a paintbrush in his hand and a blue smudged face. His expression seemed hopeful. My memories an anchor. When Emily delivered balloons the following day, Zoe came over with cupcakes. Just to check in, Dr. Kim came by. As a friend, not as a physician. They did not invade. They did not assume control. They rejoiced. We had a little get-together to welcome home. Just love between us. No loud chants, no flags, no snatched festivities. Just the silent warmth of genuine assistance. To Skylar and Jack, Zoe held up a tumbler of sparkling juice. "For showing us what true strength looks like," she remarked. Later that evening, after Jack had gone to sleep and the lights had been turned down, I opened my laptop while sitting by the window. I had a message from Victoria in my inbox. They lost their appeal. According to the court's decision, they will never again be allowed to get in touch with you or Jack. Officially, the house is in your name, not contested. After a long minute of staring at the screen, I muttered, "It's not just me in this house. Now it's secure." Not only was it secure for me, but it was also safe for the boy who would never have to compromise his own comfort for the sake of others. I went to the nursery and kissed Jack's forehead while leaning over the cot. "We are no longer broken, little one," I said. "We're creating a better structure, one brick at a time." Tiny socks, glitter, and bits of colored paper on the kitchen table were all bathed in a gentle golden glow, as the early sun streamed through the nursery window. Waiting was a handcrafted birthday crown, silver, glitter, purple construction paper, and crooked letters that say Jackass 4. Jack ran into the room as I stood at the sink, pulling out the last of the cake pans. Superhero-like arms extended. His feet hardly made contact with the ground. "Mom!" I completed my card. "Do you want to see?" He waved a sheet of paper with a son's oversized smile and strong strokes of purple stick figures. I crouched to give him a cheek kiss and murmured, "It's perfect, similar to you." The house came alive once more, but this time it was with warmth rather than pandemonium, with a choice. My closest friends started to arrive, and the living room was filled with quiet laughing. Streamers were brought by Emily. Zoe had some tiny sandwiches on a platter. Even Dr. Kim, who was no longer in a white coat, stopped over with a bouquet of wildflowers for me and a wrapped book for Jack. It was more than simply a birthday celebration. For us both, it was a significant occasion. A music that was playing on the kitchen speaker prompted Jack to dance. His pride caused his small legs to wobble. He was compassionate, intelligent, powerful, and impervious to the ghosts that used to haunt these walls, as well as myself. I no longer feared being noticed. I'm not holding my breath in my house anymore. Jack was sound asleep with his new toy truck cradled against his chest after the festivities. After everyone had left, I was sitting in what had been my office. It was now our common craft area, stocked with paint jars, ribbons, and framed business magazine stories. I restored hand patterns and hearths. A letter sat near the coffee maker, describing a formerly modest handcrafted decor firm that has grown to become a nationally recognized name with a foundation that helped women fleeing dangerous homes. I carefully opened it. "I'm a single mother in Seattle, Skylar. In Parents Magazine, I came across your tale. I want to go, but I'm afraid. This is not how I want my son to grow up." I folded the letter and put it with a few others in a wooden box. I cleared a path, and each one was from a lady who had discovered hope. Not only surviving, rebirth. Jack slipped out of bed that night and got into my lap, pressing his head against my breast. "Mommy, may we read the castle book?" Grinning, I took his favorite, the one about the courageous princess who creates her own kingdom out of debris. Since true love elevates rather than depresses, Jack broke off as I was reading with the passage he always remembered the best. With pride, he declared. I tightened my grip on him and gave him a forehead kiss. "You're right," I said in a whisper. "You are never asked to be smaller by true love." Still hanging a little off-center was the silver streamer that Jack had taped over the kitchen window. I laughed it just as he had put it in. Beautiful, flawless, and all his own. Similar to the life we created. One step, one fight, one brave moment at a time. We appreciate you seeing this stirring tale of bravery, treachery, and justice. Please take a time to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if this story resonated with you. With your help, we can tell more meaningful, real-life tales. See you at the following one. Story 3, thank you for being here. Don't come. On Christmas, my father texted me. Living with my sister, I've been paying for all of the bills, food, and rent that evening. I was just squatting, she informed them. I remained silent. However, her key did not fit the following morning, and 2 gift-wrapped boxes waited silently, one of which was still in motion. Thank you for being here. Don't come. My dad sent me the note on Christmas Eve. No welcome, no explanation. 6 dry words, that's all, similar to a last rejection stamp. I folded my knees and sat on my room's floor, blinking at the screen as though if I looked at it long enough, the message might change to something more positive. It didn't. Every one of them was present. My sister and dad are enjoying the holiday together as a joyful whole family, and once more, I was the one excluded. I have spent the past year and a half covering everything. Pay the rent, food, utilities. Alina, my sister, had lost her job, or so she said. And I paid all of the bills in silence and without protest while she worked things out. Because, after all, that's what families do. She didn't say much that evening before heading to our parents' house for Christmas dinner. She halted at the door, threw her coat over her shoulder, and gave her hair a final fluff in the mirror. "Oh, just in case they inquire. You're just kind of sitting here," I informed them. "Since your name isn't on the lease, you know." She wasn't kidding when she said that. She spoke it as if it were true. Looking up from the dishes, I did so. My hands froze in the soapy water as I was working. What did you tell them? She gave an eye roll. Calm down. It's not really important. All I wanted was for them not to think. You can live here for free or whatever. This is just more convenient. However, I'm covering the rent. I spoke in a flat, calm voice. Yes, well, that's not necessary for them to know. She went before I could answer. I didn't send an SMS. I did not make a call. I didn't make an effort to clarify. Rather, I pondered how many more years I would continue to do this while sitting at the kitchen table and gazing at the inexpensive string lights I had installed weeks before. Continue to cover the costs for those who have already determined that I don't belong. I made up my mind by midnight. I got up, changed the locks, took out the tools, and opened the closet in the corridor. No reluctance, no shame. The place seemed lighter as I went to bed. Keep quiet, secure, mine. For the first time, perhaps. Around 8:17 a.m. the next morning, I heard keys fumbling at the door. A curse, a click, one more click, nothing. The beating, the banging, then the hush. I left her something, but I didn't open the door. On the welcome mat are 2 gift-wrapped parcels. One had a lovely ribbon attached to it and was medium in size. The smaller one was still in motion. Small food came first, followed by rent and her college loans, which she promised to repay in full as quickly as possible. And I didn't challenge her when she was dismissed again. I simply intervened. I worked more hours. My old laptop was sold. I stopped dating, traveling, and engaging in hobbies. I told myself this was only a short-term situation, that the role of good brothers was to keep my sister aloft. However, temporary turned into regular, and routine turned into a never-ending commitment. Became quiet. Because if someone allows you to pay their expenses, what exactly do you say to them? Then you inform your parents that you're living in your flat in a squat? I ought to have anticipated it. Words had always come naturally to Elena. She was skilled at manipulating events such that I was the aggressor, and she was the victim. She sobbed her way out of everything as a child. She sobbed her way into everyone's pocketbook as an adult. Even our parents, particularly our parents. She was the creative spirit to them, a bit disorganized. Mom used to giggle when she said that. She has good intentions, though. In the meanwhile, I was too chilly, too domineering, and too serious. But when love comes with restrictions, you end yourself frigid. Months ago, I stopped attending family gatherings. I couldn't keep up the pretense, not because I didn't want to see them. Every discussion devolved into a guilt trip about money. The stable one is you. She's having trouble. She has a gentle spirit, you know. Why are you so hard all the time? The reality. I was worn out. I'm sick of having to pay for everything. Fed up with being the only grown-up in the room. I'm sick of waking up in a paid flat every day. I was a burden, to put it simply. However, 3 weeks before to Christmas, something snapped inside of me. In the living room, we were seated. I had just picked up takeout for the 2 of us after finishing a 12-hour workday. The bag was set on the table by me. Elena remained glued to her phone. "Could you send me a Venmo?" "Casually," she said, regarding my portion of the takeaway. I blinked. "Do you mean the takeaway I paid for with my card? You haven't made your rent payment in 3 months." Thumbs still fluttering across her screen, she shrugged. "Yes, but you made that decision. You weren't asked. All year long, you've been asking me?" "Yeah," she answered, looking up at last. "Well, you weren't coerced." Then it dawned on me. She never experienced guilt. Not once. She wasn't desperate enough to use me. I allowed her to take advantage of me. I saw the credit card bill a week later, but it wasn't my purse or what should have been hers. The sole issue. My name was on the statement. I took a seat on my bed's edge, gazing at the balance, heart racing. At Sephora, $438.72 was spent. Apple, Zara, a resort with spa services, a deposit for a tattoo. I gave the business a call. They used my email address and social security number to verify that the account was open. My identity had been stolen by her. I didn't even go straight to her. I simply became silent and watched. Followed. Captured screenshots. Watch her walk around the apartment wearing an Apple Watch and new boots, chatting about my dumb brother while laughing on FaceTime with her pals. As if I weren't 5 feet distant. I was going to hold off on saying anything until the new year. February, perhaps. Allow it to develop and sting. Then Christmas arrived, and my father's message. "Thank you for being here. Don't come." Elena smirked as she sipped her wine that evening. When you behave like a tenant, you really can't expect them to consider you family. You're not welcome. I therefore changed the locks. Since I'm not mean, I left her the presents I had initially purchased for her. I also added another. The second box contained a flash drive containing audio files and a copy of the credit card statement with her name written in red marker. I had recorded her boasting to her friends, one in which she laughed. "He truly deserves it. He functions similarly to an overdraft-free bank. Why wouldn't I exploit it?" The phone I had concealed inside mine, vibrating and buzzing continuously from a set alarm, caused the box to tremble a little. I wanted her to experience the same emotions I had throughout the year. Perplexed, rattled, shaken. I was in the kitchen reheating leftovers when the banging started, not knocking. Banging like someone wanted to break the door in. It didn't surprise me. What surprised me was how calm I felt. I opened the door slowly. There she was. Elena. Here. A mess. Eyeliner smudged rage written across her face. "What is this?" she screamed, holding up the still-moving silver box like it was a bomb. I tilted my head. A Christmas present. It was vibrating. "I know. Did you open it?" Her mouth opened and shut. "You should," I said, stepping aside. "Come in, since you don't have keys anymore." She stormed in, dropping the box on the coffee table. The ribbon was half untied. She yanked the lid off and stared. Quiet. Inside, perfectly arranged, were a stack of printed screenshots from her text conversations, where she called me a freeloader and just a walking paycheck. A flash drive labeled for Dad. "Play this if you still have a spine," and a sticky note folded neatly with only one line. "Your lease is up emotionally and otherwise." She turned to me, eyes wild. "You're heartless." "No," I said. Just done right then. My phone exploded. A call from Dad. I answered it on speaker. "Son, what is going on? Your sister just showed us what you left her. That was cruel. What happened to family?" I let out a quick laugh. "You mean the family that warned me not to come to Christmas? That wasn't about you," he snapped. "You've been aloof. You withdraw from others. I was instructed not to come by you," I interrupted. "And you know what? I paid attention. I was holding the phone when Elena grabbed it. He's gone totally crazy, Dad. He replaced the locks. Is he pursuing me? It was his plan." "Oh, please." Regaining the phone, I said, "Tell him what's actually in that box, please." A pause occurred. "Dad," with a firm voice, I went on, "do you know who has been opening credit accounts under my name? Are you aware of who is owed $6,438 under my name?" Quiet. Then Dad said something. "Is that accurate?" "No," Elena yelled. "That's something he made up. He is attempting to attract attention." She. Therefore, why is her email address linked to an account that has my SSN on Capital One? I questioned why my name was on the receipts from the stores she frequented. No response. The finest part, though. I proceeded to the shelf and took out a tiny black speaker. "Is this?" I hit the play button. Her voice was as clear as day as it filled the room. "It's so simple to control him. He is constantly feeling bad. He will still cover my phone bill even if I set the flat on fire." The color left her face. "That's not relevant." "Really?" I furrowed my brow. "What circumstances make him deserving of suffering?" Dad said nothing. She was too. The world was the same. And then there was a knock. A gentle, surprising one. I pulled the door open. Mom was the one. And Mike behind her, Elena's former partner. "Who are you?" Elena got going. Mike said, "I need to talk to you." "You too." He was trembling as he said. Not out of terror, though, from rage. He looked straight at me and said, "I just discovered that someone has been using my name to order iPhones last month. A hotel reservation made in my name. Today, they gave me a call to collect money." He looked at Elena. "Did you do it?" She parted her lips. "I closed it. Have you opened it once more?" Why would I act in such way? The item on the coffee table caught his attention. The speaker was still blazing red, the flash drive was still there, and screenshots were printed. He said, "I think you should go." "What comes next?" She lost her temper. Mike said, "I'm staying here," and entered. I tightened my jaw. "What are you trying to say?" He looked at me and replied, Please allow me to collapse for a few days. Perhaps it's time for us to cease playing her game since I believe the same individual has played both of us." Elena blinked as though she had been struck. "Are you on his side? I will no longer support liars." For the first time in her life, she stood still. No phony tears, no script, no one to control. Nothing but quiet. I tossed her coat from the chair and reassured her. "Your belongings are located next to the trash can in the hallway. You can guess which one it is." She went out. No more dangers. No more feelings of guilt. Only the sound of the elevator closing and footsteps down the hall. Elena left the following morning. There was no longer a void in the quiet of my apartment. It was merited. The steam rose in lazy spirals as I stood in the kitchen with a mug of reheated coffee. I thought I might experience regret or guilt, but I didn't. My chest doesn't hurt. Don't second-guess yourself. Just tranquility. Mike remained on the couch, snoring quietly beneath a blanket. The previous evening, I threw him out. After Elena left, he had remained silent. Simply nodded, muttered at last, and fainted. However, he raised an eyebrow when he woke up and noticed the laptop open on the table. "Are you already employed?" He rubbed his face and said, "I'm getting my money back." "What? As in pressing charges?" "More than that." I swiveled the screen in his direction. "This will become official. The claim is the first step." The night Elena left, I had already started gathering evidence. I had actual files of data, including images of my bank account history, IP login logs, credit card bills, and even receipts for each and every purchase she had made in my name. I initiated files with all of the impacted financial institutions and formally reported identity theft to the police. First to reply was Capital One. They initiated a thorough fraud investigation after flagging the account. By Friday, a confirmation email buzzed through my phone. "Your whole refund has been authorized. $6,438. 72 has been returned to my account." For the first time in days, I sat back in my chair and let out a breath, but I wasn't finished. The second step is the computation. I started entering 18 months' worth of rent payments for 2 individuals into a spreadsheet. $950 per month, $180 for utilities. Average groceries for $100 per random emergencies, $100 to $500, sometimes more. I continued to browse endlessly. By the time I neared the bottom of the sheet, my stomach turned $17,892. Not considering mental harm, not including the times I missed meals or did multiple shifts simply to remain ahead. I grabbed screenshots, stored them to a flash drive, and called a lawyer. Step 3. The outfit. "She used my credit, but that's not the only reason I'm here. I want restitution," I told the lawyer. For more than a year, she was dependent on me, and my parents supported it. He wore pricey shoes, was a bright man, and grinned as if he had already won. "Have you evidence?" he inquired. On his desk, I slid the flash drive. After plugging it in and clicking, he looked at it and his eyes widened. "You kept a record of everything, each and every dime. What about the parents?" Without my knowledge, they added my name to utility accounts. I located the contracts. He whistled softly. "Identity theft is not all of this. Long-term financial exploitation is what this is." "Do we have a case then?" "Oh," he leaned back and replied. "Ours is a highly visible one. Get ready for the blast." On a soggy Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks later, 3 certified letters arrived at my parents' house. 1 each for Mom, Dad, and Elena, all from Keller's legal office, and more. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. ID of the caller? "Mom," I said. "What are you doing?" She lost her temper. "You two have a good morning. Are you suing us? Following everything that we have done for you." "Done to me," I said. "Don't twist it. Your family is us. In addition, you co-signed 2 utility bills and, without my permission, added me to a 3rd. That is deception. All it was paperwork. Theft was committed. This is being exaggerated by you. I was instructed not to attend Christmas." There was silence on the line. Then she lowered an octave in her voice. "You were reared by us. When you need us, we let you stay here. Everything was paid for by me. I wasn't going to remain. I was assisting. There is a distinction. The ally is step 5. My grandma gave me a call 3 days later. It had been months since I last heard from her, since Elena informed me. No, Nana has had enough of your drama. Don't give her another call." Her voice was forceful now, though. She claimed to have seen the bank statement and the lawsuit. My heart fell. "Did you witness the bond?" She let out a sigh. "Your father took more than $9,000 out of a savings bond that was made in your name. He paid off Lena's old automobile with it." I took a firm seat. "You were unaware?" she inquired. "I was unaware of the link. There isn't any more," she said. I relocated the account and frozen what was left. "Once more, it's yours, where it ought to have been." I was at a loss for words. She then included everything of my written will as well. "When the time comes, my house will be given to you. I'm confident you'll handle it properly." I blinked. "Nana, why?" She said that you are the only one who has never made a request. The only person who maintained receipts was you. The courtroom. Elena appeared as though she was trying to win people over with her beige outfit. Mom was dressed in black. Dad avoided looking at her. My attorney explained everything. Statements on page after page, text messages and audio recordings, fraud in banks, power of attorney, misuses, false reports, savings, breaches of bonds. Elena attempted to weep. Early onset confusion, according to Mom. Dad simply seemed worn out. The judge, however, the magistrate wasn't worn out. "Did you really put your son's name on financial records without his permission?" She questioned my mom. "It was family after all, ma'am. Is it true or false?" "Keep quiet." At last, she muttered. "Yes." The decision was made swiftly. $13,000 being reimbursed. All false debts have been paid off. Court expenses are paid. Additionally, they have a formal warning on file. The scene after the credits. I received a letter 2 weeks later, written by hand. No address for return. Elena's compositions. I recognized it right away. "Are you content now? You got your message across." There was a photograph inside, folded in half. Hers and mine. Children seated beneath a Christmas tree. I examined our faces. She was holding on to me tightly, as if I were her sole source of equilibrium. I reached for a rear pin. I typed a single line, "You release first." I then set the picture on fire. The sound of quiet after earning it is amusing. 3 months following the court's decision, my parents hadn't gotten back to me yet. No calls, no texts, not even a card for your birthday. And what do you know? Excellent. I didn't have to justify myself anymore. No more demonstrating that I wasn't a letdown. You ought to be aware of how difficult your sister's life is. Not anymore. The stable one is you. You are necessary to us. At last, my life was mine. The same flat was where I stayed. However, it truly felt like mine for the first time. The type of establishment where everything in the refrigerator is yours when you open it, not to someone who secretly dubbed you a squatter when there is still a lack of tension in the air, where no one leaves passive-aggressive messages about items they didn't pay for, clogs the sink, or hijacks the Wi-Fi. The couch, the walls, and the window view were all the same. However, the quiet. That had never been done before. The tranquility. Not familiar. Keep quiet, strong. People occasionally inquire about the pricing. Wasn't it challenging? Isn't cutting off your entire family cruel? And I always give the same response. It was essential. I shrank for years to make myself more comfortable for them, grinning despite insults. Instead of establishing limits, write checks. They offered me nothing but guilt, and I allowed them to accuse me of being selfish for not giving them everything. How long I allowed that to happen was the true cruelty. I realized the reality when I eventually stopped pretending to be the dutiful son and the giving brother. I wasn't missed by them. What did they miss? I conveyed the message to them. I received a message from a name I didn't know when I checked my inbox one May afternoon. The heading, "Your sister's condition is not good." It came from Tessa, a lady. It seems to be an old buddy of Elena's. It was a brief message. "Chilly. She's sitting on couches. She lost her job once more. Claims that you destroyed her life. I assumed you would be curious." After a lengthy moment of staring at the computer, I clicked erase. Care isn't the same as turning back, nor because I didn't care. The final meeting. My dad and I met up at a petrol station one day. Our gazes met on the other side of the pump. He appeared smaller and older, as if he had finally ran out of reasons to justify his actions. He came softly, with a peculiar kind of guilt rather than rage. He remarked, "You look good." I gave a nod. He glanced at the floor. "Your mother is still upset, you know that." I said nothing. "You ruined Christmas," she says. I arched an eyebrow. "That's amusing." She began by saying, "Don't come." I simply listened. He let out a sigh. "Son, family quarrels?" "No," I said. "Families defend one another. You stood up for Elena. You didn't stand up for me. He had nothing to say about that. You just waited for me to open the door for him to return." I didn't. After I got into my car and drove off, I felt at peace. This was not retaliation. This was liberty. Let me clarify. This has nothing to do with revenge. There was no intention of penalizing anyone. This had nothing to do with establishing my correctness, although I was. It was time to let go, abandoning a system in which love was a transaction, releasing the guilt that I never had to bear, letting go of the self that pleaded to be heard or seen, appreciated. I had no intention of ruining my family. I just quit ruining myself for their sake. Elena is liked by others. Those who accuse, distort, and take. Others continue to absorb the hit, which is how they live. When I stopped absorbing, the entire mechanism broke down. It was because I left, not because I broke it. And the first actual soul for the first time. I felt alive for a long time. The surprising conclusion. I received a box 2 weeks ago. No address for return. There was a plain envelope inside, as well as within the envelope. Just one picture. Ellie, Elena's daughter from years ago, and I were there. Perhaps 4 years old. She sat on my shoulders, giggling, holding my face with her small hands, and writing in a wobbly, strange style on the reverse of the picture. "I apologize for my mother's treatment of you. Ellie, thank you for everything." I gazed at the text till it became hazy. How she obtained my address is still a mystery to me. My granny, perhaps. Perhaps fate. However, just single note made it all worthwhile. I currently save the picture in my desk drawer. It reminds me, not because it connects me to the past. You don't stop loving when you go away. It indicates that you begin to love yourself more. And it's not retaliation. Freedom is that.